Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the chaos surrounding her in the pistol bay. Empty brass casings littered the concrete floor like golden confetti, and the acrid smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. The Thunder Valley shooting range had just closed for the day, and she was the unlucky volunteer who had drawn cleaning duty for the indoor pistol range. At 23, Sarah worked part-time at the gun store attached to the range while finishing her criminal justice degree. She had grown up around firearms thanks to her father, a retired police officer who had taught her gun safety from an early age. But despite her familiarity with weapons, she had never been much of a shooter herself. Her aim was mediocre at best, and she usually avoided the range when customers were around, embarrassed by her inconsistent performance. The pistol bay was a mess. Earlier that day, the range had hosted a law enforcement training session, and dozens of officers had spent hours practicing their marksmanship. Sergeant Mike Kowalski, the gruff rangemaster who had been running Thunder Valley for over 15 years, had warned Sarah that the cleanup would be extensive. What she hadn't expected was the sheer volume of debris and equipment left behind. She started by collecting the spent brass casings, dropping them into a large bucket with metallic clinks that echoed through the empty range. The officers had been practicing various drills, from basic accuracy to rapid-fire sequences, and the evidence of their training was scattered everywhere. As she worked, Sarah found herself studying the target papers that had been left hanging on the automated retrieval system. Some of the targets showed impressive groupings, tight clusters of holes centered in the scoring rings. Others were more scattered, evidence of shooters still working to improve their skills. Sarah paused at one target that caught her attention. The paper was riddled with holes, but they were concentrated in a neat pattern around the bullseye. Someone had been practicing double-tap drills, she realized, firing 2 quick shots in succession. The double-tap technique was something her father had mentioned but never taught her. It required precise timing, muscle memory, and the ability to quickly reacquire the target after the first shot. As Sarah examined the target more closely, she could see the slight separation between the entry points, indicating the shooter had managed to place both rounds very close together, despite the rapid succession. She continued cleaning, sweeping up dirt and debris that had been tracked in throughout the day. The range had 10 individual shooting lanes, each separated by reinforced barriers and equipped with electronic target systems. The ventilation fans hummed overhead, designed to pull smoke and fumes away from the shooting positions. Despite the industrial atmosphere, Sarah had always found something peaceful about the range when it was empty and quiet. As she worked her way down the line of shooting lanes, Sarah discovered that someone had left behind a box of ammunition on lane 7. The box was half empty, containing high-quality target rounds that were more expensive than the bulk ammunition most recreational shooters used. She picked up the box, intending to turn it in to the lost and found, when she noticed something else. Sitting on the shelf beneath the lane divider was a cleaning kit and a small notebook. The notebook appeared to be a shooting log, with entries documenting various practice sessions. Curious, Sarah flipped through a few pages and saw meticulous records of shot groups, ammunition types, and weather conditions. Whoever owned this notebook took their shooting very seriously. The last entry was dated that morning and included notes about working on consistency under pressure and need to improve double-tap timing. The handwriting was neat and precise, belonging to someone who approached shooting with scientific methodology rather than casual recreation. Sarah set the notebook aside and continued cleaning. She moved the movable barriers back to their standard positions and wiped down the shooting benches where participants had rested their firearms and equipment. The range rules required all surfaces to be cleaned after law enforcement training sessions, both for hygiene and to remove any residue that might interfere with future shooters. As she cleaned the last lane, Sarah found herself thinking about the notebook and the careful documentation of shooting practice. She had always approached firearms with respect, but had never considered the level of dedication required to truly master marksmanship. Her own shooting had been casual, limited to occasional trips to the range with her father and the minimal practice required for her part-time job. The cleaning process took nearly 2 hours, but finally the pistol bay was restored to its pristine condition. Sarah had swept the floors, wiped down all surfaces, emptied the trash receptacles, and organized the equipment storage area. The range was ready for the next day's customers, and she felt a sense of satisfaction at having completed the tedious but necessary work. Before leaving, she decided to test the target retrieval system to make sure everything was functioning properly. She sent a fresh target downriver to the 25-yard line and brought it back, watching the smooth operation of the automated cables and pulleys. The system worked perfectly, and the target hung straight and secure. Sarah gathered the lost items she had found, including the ammunition box and notebook, and headed toward the front desk to log them in the lost and found register. As she walked through the empty range, the fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished concrete floor, she couldn't shake the image of those precisely placed double tap holes in the target she had examined earlier. Something about the technical precision required for that type of shooting intrigued her. She'd always thought of firearms training as either basic safety or advanced tactical application, but the notebook suggested there was an entire spectrum of skill development in between. The idea of approaching shooting as a discipline requiring constant practice and improvement was new to her, and it sparked a curiosity she hadn't expected to feel. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Thunder Valley early, hoping to catch Sergeant Kowalski before the range opened to the public. She had spent the previous evening thinking about the notebook and ammunition she had found, and she wanted to make sure they were returned to their rightful owner. More than that, she found herself curious about the level of dedication required to achieve the kind of precision she had seen in those target papers. Mike Kowalski was already in his office, reviewing the day's schedule and sipping coffee from a mug that read, "Accuracy through practice." He was a stocky man in his 50s with gray hair and weathered hands that spoke of decades handling firearms. His reputation as a range master was built on both his technical expertise and his ability to help shooters of all skill levels improve their performance. "Morning. Sarah," he called out as she knocked on his open door. "Thanks for staying late yesterday to clean up after those cops. They're good shooters, but they sure know how to make a mess." Sarah handed him the lost items and explained where she had found them. Kowalski examined the notebook and ammunition box with recognition dawning on his face. "This belongs to Detective Lisa Chen," he said, flipping through the shooting log. "She's been coming here for about 6 months working on her tactical shooting skills. She's one of the most dedicated students I've ever had. This notebook represents hundreds of hours of practice and analysis." He paused at one of the entries and smiled. "She's been working specifically on her double tap technique. It's a challenging skill that requires perfect timing and muscle memory. Most people think it's just about shooting fast, but it's really about shooting fast and accurate." Sarah's curiosity got the better of her. "I saw some of the targets from yesterday's training session. The double tap holes were incredibly close together. How does someone learn to do that?" Kowalski leaned back in his chair and studied Sarah with interest. "You know, in all the time you've worked here, I've never seen you on the range practicing. Your father tells me you know gun safety, but have you ever worked on developing your shooting skills?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She had always thought of her shooting ability as adequate for her needs, but she had never considered pushing herself to achieve higher levels of proficiency. "I can hit a target at basic distances," she said, "but I've never really focused on advanced techniques." "The double tap is foundational to tactical shooting," Kowalski explained. "The idea is to fire 2 shots in rapid succession at the same target, typically to the center mass area. The first shot disrupts the target, and the second shot follows immediately to ensure effectiveness. But in competitive and law enforcement contexts, both shots need to be accurate, not just fast." He stood up and walked to a wall covered with certificates and photographs from various shooting competitions and training courses. Detective Chen started coming here because she wanted to improve her qualification scores. She was a decent shot, but she knew that in her line of work, decent might not be good enough when it matters. Sarah found herself drawn into the conversation. The idea of approaching shooting as a skill that could be methodically developed appealed to her analytical nature. "How long does it take to learn something like that?" "Depends on the person and how much they practice," Kowalski replied. "Some people have natural hand-eye coordination and can pick it up quickly. Others need more time to develop the muscle memory. But everyone can improve with proper instruction and dedicated practice." He looked at his watch and realized they had about 30 minutes before the range opened for business. "Tell you what," he said, "since you're here early and the range is empty, why don't I show you the basics of double tap shooting? Consider it a thank you for all the cleaning and organizing you do around here." Sarah felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had always been self-conscious about her shooting in front of others, particularly someone with Kowalski's level of expertise. But the opportunity to learn from such an experienced instructor was too valuable to pass up. They made their way to the pistol bay that Sarah had cleaned so thoroughly the night before. Kowalski selected a reliable service pistol from the range's rental inventory, a model commonly used by law enforcement officers. He checked the weapon thoroughly, demonstrating the safety protocols that were second nature to him. The first thing to understand about double-tap shooting is that it's not about speed alone, he began as he loaded the magazine with practice ammunition. It's about controlled pairs. You want 2 quick, accurate shots, not 2 fast, wild shots. He demonstrated the proper shooting stance, explaining how the body position provided stability and recoil control. Sarah had learned basic shooting positions from her father, but Kowalski's instruction included subtle refinements that she had never considered. The way he positioned his feet, the angle of his body, and the grip on the pistol all worked together to create a stable shooting platform. The key to the double tap is sight recovery, Kowalski continued. After the first shot, the recoil will move your sights off target. You need to let the natural recoil cycle complete, then bring the sights back to the target for the second shot. Fighting the recoil will throw off your timing and accuracy. He sent a target downriver to the 15-yard line, a distance that was challenging but manageable for learning new techniques. The target featured a standard silhouette with scoring rings, providing clear visual feedback for shot placement. Sarah watched as Kowalski demonstrated a perfect double-tap sequence. His movements were smooth and controlled, and she could hear the distinct rhythm of the 2 shots, quick but not hurried. When he retrieved the target, both holes were in the center scoring area, separated by less than 2 inches. Your turn, he said, offering her the pistol. Remember, this is about learning the technique, not about perfect performance on the first try. Focus on the fundamentals: sight alignment, trigger control, and following through on both shots. Sarah took the pistol and checked it according to the safety protocols she had learned years earlier. The weight of the weapon felt familiar, but approaching it with this level of technical focus was entirely new. She had shot recreationally many times, but she had never attempted anything as precise as controlled double-tap shooting. She positioned herself at the firing line and brought the pistol up to eye level, aligning the front and rear sights on the center of the target. Taking a deep breath, she focused on applying steady pressure to the trigger for the first shot. The pistol fired, and she felt the familiar recoil push the weapon upward. Instead of immediately firing the second shot, she followed Kowalski's instruction to let the recoil cycle complete naturally. She watched the sights settle back toward the target area and squeezed the trigger again. The second shot felt more controlled than her usual shooting, and she found herself genuinely curious about the results. When Kowalski retrieved the target, Sarah was pleasantly surprised by the results. Both shots had found the target, with 1 hole in the 8 ring and another in the 7 ring. They weren't perfect, but they were respectable for a first attempt at the technique. Not bad at all, Kowalski said, examining the target. You've got good basic fundamentals, and your shots show you're thinking about the process, rather than just pulling the trigger. The spacing between the holes tells me you're controlling the recoil recovery instead of rushing the second shot. Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction that surprised her. She had always approached shooting as a necessary skill, rather than something she might actually enjoy improving. But there was something compelling about the precision required for the double-tap technique that appealed to her methodical nature. What should I focus on to improve? She asked, genuinely interested in Kowalski's feedback. Your sight alignment is good, but I noticed you're anticipating the recoil slightly on the first shot, he observed. That's causing you to push the gun down just before it fires, which is why your first shot hit low. The second shot was actually better placed because you were focused on sight recovery. He demonstrated the proper follow-through technique, showing how to maintain sight alignment even after the trigger broke. The shot should surprise you slightly, he explained. If you're anticipating the exact moment of ignition, you're probably disturbing the sight picture. They spent the next 20 minutes working on basic marksmanship principles before the range opened for business. Sarah fired several more double-tap sequences, gradually developing a feel for the rhythm and timing required. Her shots became more consistent, and she began to understand the subtle coordination between sight picture, trigger control, and recoil management. As other staff members arrived and the range prepared to open, Sarah found herself reluctant to end the impromptu lesson. She had discovered something she hadn't expected, a genuine interest in developing her shooting. Skills beyond basic competency. I'd like to continue working on this, she told Kowalski as they secured the firearms and cleaned up the shooting lane. Would it be possible to practice during slow periods when the range isn't busy? Kowalski smiled, recognizing the spark of genuine interest that separated casual shooters from dedicated students. Absolutely. In fact, I think you'd benefit from some structured practice rather than just random shooting. Detective Chen's notebook approach isn't a bad model. Keeping track of your progress helps identify what's working and what needs improvement. He suggested that Sarah start with basic marksmanship, fundamentals before progressing to more advanced techniques like the double tap. Build a solid foundation first, he advised. Accuracy before speed, precision before flash. Once you can consistently hit what you're aiming at with single shots, the double tap becomes much easier to learn. Over the next several weeks, Sarah began spending her break times and quiet periods at the range practicing under Kowalski's occasional supervision. She started her own shooting notebook, documenting her practice sessions with the same methodical approach she had seen in Detective Chen's log. Her initial entries were basic: date, time, ammunition type, distance, and number of shots fired. But as she became more serious about improvement, she began adding notes about technique, environmental conditions, and specific things she wanted to work on. The notebook became a roadmap for her development as a shooter. Sarah discovered that consistent practice was more valuable than occasional long sessions. 20 minutes of focused shooting 3 times a week produced better results than hour-long sessions once a week. She learned to warm up with basic marksmanship before attempting more challenging techniques, and she began to recognize the mental focus required for precision shooting. The double tap technique gradually became more natural. What had initially felt like 2 separate shots began to flow together as a single, coordinated sequence. Her sight recovery improved, and she developed the timing necessary to place both shots accurately while maintaining the quick rhythm that made the technique tactically useful. Other staff members began to notice Sarah's improvement. Tom Bradley, the gunsmith who worked in the shop, commented on her dedication after observing one of her practice sessions. "You've really committed to this," he said. "Your shooting has improved dramatically in just a few weeks." The compliment meant more to Sarah than she had expected. She was beginning to understand the satisfaction that came from methodically developing a skill through dedicated practice. The precision required for good shooting appealed to the same part of her personality that excelled in her academic studies. Detective Chen eventually returned to claim her lost items, and Kowalski introduced her to Sarah. Chen was a petite woman in her early 30s with an intense focus and a genuine passion for tactical shooting. When she learned about Sarah's interest in double tap techniques, she offered to share some of the training methods she had learned. "The key is dry practice," Chen explained. "You can work on sight alignment, trigger control, and muscle memory at home without firing live ammunition. I probably do 3 dry practice sessions for every live fire session." She showed Sarah how to safely practice drawing, aiming, and trigger manipulation using an unloaded firearm in a controlled environment. The dry practice allowed her to work on the mechanical aspects of shooting, without the expense and time requirements of range sessions. Sarah began incorporating dry practice into her daily routine, spending 15 minutes each evening working on the fundamentals. She practiced the smooth presentation of the firearm from various positions, the precise alignment of the sights, and the straight back pressure on the trigger that produced accurate shots. The combination of regular live fire practice and daily dry practice began to show significant results. Sarah's shooting scores improved steadily, and her confidence grew with her competence. She was no longer self-conscious about practicing when other people were around, and she began to enjoy the challenge of pushing her skills to higher levels. One evening, as Sarah was finishing a practice session, she realized that Detective Chen had been right about the importance of documentation and methodical improvement. Her notebook now contained dozens of entries tracking her progress from basic accuracy to increasingly challenging techniques. Looking back at her early entries, she could see clear evidence of improvement. Her group sizes had tightened significantly, her scores had improved across all distances, and techniques that had once seemed impossibly difficult were becoming routine. The double tap that had originally caught her attention was now a reliable skill that she could perform consistently. 3 months into her dedicated practice routine, Sarah had transformed from a casual shooter into someone who approached firearms training with serious intent. Her notebook was filled with detailed entries tracking everything from ammunition performance to environmental factors that affected her shooting. More importantly, she had developed the kind of consistent accuracy that comes only from methodical practice and proper instruction. The transformation hadn't gone unnoticed. Regular customers at Thunder Valley began asking Sarah for advice about equipment and techniques, recognizing her growing expertise. Kowalski had started referring newer shooters to her for basic instruction, trusting her knowledge and teaching ability. One particularly busy Saturday afternoon, the range was hosting a law enforcement qualification course. Officers from several departments had gathered to complete their mandatory shooting requirements, and the atmosphere was professional but relaxed. Sarah was working behind the counter when she overheard a conversation that caught her attention. Captain Robert Hayes from the County Sheriff's Department was talking to Kowalski about the upcoming regional police shooting competition. Several officers had expressed interest in participating, but the department was looking for additional team members who could represent them well in the various shooting disciplines. "We need someone who can handle the precision events," Captain Hayes was saying. "The double-tap Bullseye competition is worth significant points toward the overall team score, but it requires a level of accuracy that most of our officers haven't developed." Sarah knew about the regional competition. It was held annually and drew law enforcement officers from across the state to compete in various shooting challenges. The double-tap Bullseye event was particularly demanding, requiring competitors to fire 2 quick shots into a target at 25 yards, with both shots counting toward the final score. As she listened to the conversation, Sarah realized that her months of practice had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. Her double-tap technique had evolved from basic competency to genuine precision, and her accuracy at 25 yards was now consistently excellent. During a quiet moment, Kowalski approached the counter where Sarah was working. "I've been thinking about what Captain Hayes said about the competition," he began. "You know, your shooting has progressed to the point where you could probably compete at that level." The suggestion caught Sarah off guard. She had been focused on personal improvement rather than competition, and the idea of shooting alongside experienced law enforcement officers was both exciting and intimidating. "Do you really think I'm ready for something like that?" she asked. "Let's find out," Kowalski replied. "Why don't we set up a practice session using the actual competition parameters? 25 yards double tap on command, scored for precision. If you can handle that consistently, then you're definitely ready." That evening after the range closed, Kowalski and Sarah set up a formal test using the competition rules. The target was a standard bullseye design with clearly defined scoring rings. Competitors would have 10 seconds to draw, aim, and fire 2 shots, with both shots scored separately and added together for the final result. Sarah had practiced similar drills, but never under the formal pressure of simulated competition conditions. Kowalski explained the scoring system and the time constraints, then positioned himself as the range officer who would give the commands. "Shooter ready?" he called out in the official format. Sarah took her position at the 25-yard line, her pistol holstered and her hands at her sides. The familiar weight of the weapon and the precise sight picture that had become second nature over months of practice gave her confidence. "Stand by," Kowalski announced, followed by the electronic beep that started the timing sequence. Sarah drew smoothly, brought the pistol to eye level, and aligned the sights on the center of the target. Her first shot broke cleanly, and she followed her training by allowing the recoil to cycle naturally before reacquiring the sight picture for the second shot. The entire sequence felt controlled and deliberate, even within the time constraint. When they retrieved the target, both shots were in the 9 ring, separated by less than an inch. The score would have been competitive in the actual tournament, and the precision of the grouping demonstrated that Sarah's months of practice had indeed prepared her for advanced competition. "That's excellent shooting," Kowalski said, genuinely impressed. "You've developed the kind of consistency that wins competitions. The technical skill is definitely there." They repeated the drill several more times, and Sarah's performance remained remarkably consistent. Her scores varied only slightly, and her shot groupings showed the kind of precision that separated casual shooters from serious competitors. Word of Sarah's impressive performance spread quickly through the law enforcement community that frequented Thunder Valley. Detective Chen stopped by a few days later to congratulate her on the progress she had made since they first met. "I heard about your practice session with the competition format," Chen said. "Kowalski tells me you're shooting scores that would place well in the regional tournament." The conversation led to an unexpected invitation. Captain Hayes approached Sarah directly about joining the county sheriff's team for the upcoming competition. While she wasn't a sworn officer, the rules allowed for civilian team members in certain categories, and her precision shooting skills would be valuable in the individual events. "We need someone who can deliver consistent accuracy under pressure," Captain Hayes explained. "The double-tap Bullseye event has been our weak point in previous years, but your scores suggest you could change that." Sarah was honored by the invitation but also nervous about the responsibility. Representing a law enforcement team in a regional competition was far beyond anything she had imagined when she first started practicing months earlier. After discussing the opportunity with her father and getting his enthusiastic encouragement, Sarah decided to accept the invitation. She would have 6 weeks to prepare for the specific demands of the competition format, working with the sheriff's team to refine her skills and develop the mental focus required for competitive shooting. The preparation intensified her training routine significantly. Instead of casual practice sessions, she now followed a structured program designed to simulate competition conditions. The sheriff's department provided access to their training facility, where she could practice alongside experienced officers who had competed previously. Sarah learned about the psychological aspects of competitive shooting that went beyond pure technical skill. Managing nervousness, maintaining focus under pressure, and dealing with the scrutiny of judges and spectators were all part of the challenge. The officers shared techniques for controlling breathing, visualizing successful performance, and maintaining confidence even when facing difficult shooting conditions. Her notebook entries became even more detailed as she documented not just her technical performance, but also her mental state during various practice sessions. She began to recognize patterns in her shooting that correlated with her level of focus and confidence, allowing her to identify what mental approach produced her best results. The cute double-tap technique that had originally caught her attention during that first cleaning session had evolved into something much more sophisticated. What had started as curiosity about the precision she had seen in Detective Chen's target papers had developed into genuine expertise that was now being recognized at the highest levels of local law enforcement. The week before the regional competition, Sarah's practice sessions took on an intensity that surprised even her. The sheriff's team had arranged for her to train at their academy facility, which featured more advanced equipment and realistic competition conditions than she had experienced at Thunder Valley. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, the team's lead competitive shooter, worked with Sarah on the mental aspects of tournament shooting. Rodriguez had competed nationally and understood the psychological pressures that could affect even the most technically skilled shooters. The difference between practice and competition isn't just the scoring, Rodriguez explained as they reviewed video footage of Sarah's recent sessions. It's the knowledge that every shot matters, that other people are watching, and that you're representing something bigger than yourself. Sarah had noticed that her shooting remained excellent during solo practice, but she sometimes struggled when other officers were observing her sessions. The awareness of being evaluated created a subtle tension that could affect her normally smooth technique. "The key is to make your competition mindset identical to your practice mindset," Rodriguez continued. "You need to develop routines and mental cues that work regardless of the external pressure." They worked on pre-shot routines that would help Sarah maintain her focus during the actual competition. She developed a specific sequence of breathing exercises, mental imagery, and physical preparation that became automatic through repetition. The routine served as an anchor, providing familiar structure even in the unfamiliar environment of formal competition. Sarah's practice scores during this final week were consistently competitive. Her double-tap accuracy at 25 yards had reached a level that impressed even the veteran officers who worked with her. More importantly, she developed the mental discipline to perform consistently regardless of distractions or pressure. The day before the team departed for the regional competition, Captain Hayes called Sarah into his office for a final briefing. The conversation covered practical details about the tournament format, but it also included something she hadn't expected, a formal recognition of how much her dedication had impressed the entire department. When Mike Kowalski first told me about your shooting development, I was interested but skeptical, Captain Hayes admitted. Law enforcement officers train their entire careers to achieve the kind of precision you've developed in just a few months. Your commitment to improvement has been remarkable. He handed her an official team jacket with the Sheriff's Department logo and her name embroidered on the chest. You're representing all of us now, he said. But more than that, you're proving that dedication and proper training can overcome any perceived limitations. The regional competition was held at a state-of-the-art facility 3 hours away, with teams from police departments, sheriff's offices, and federal agencies throughout the region. Sarah was amazed by the level of organization and professionalism that surrounded the event. Electronic scoring systems, professional-grade equipment, and strict safety protocols created an atmosphere that was both exciting and intimidating. During the initial registration and equipment inspection, Sarah met competitors from departments much larger than her own county sheriff's office. Many of them had years of competitive experience and training resources that far exceeded what she had access to. The realization that she would be competing against such experienced shooters created a moment of doubt about her readiness. Detective Chen, who was competing with her own department's team, found Sarah during the competitor briefing and offered some perspective that helped calm her nerves. I've been watching the practice sessions, Chen said. Your technical skills are as good as anyone here. The only difference between you and the veterans is that they've been in this environment before, but that doesn't make them better shooters than you. The first day of competition included individual events that would determine qualifications for the final rounds. Sarah's double-tap Bullseye event was scheduled for the afternoon, giving her time to observe other competitions and acclimate to the tournament atmosphere. She watched the precision rifle competitions in the morning, studying how the most successful competitors managed their mental preparation and shot execution. The common thread among the top performers was their consistent pre-shot routine and their ability to maintain focus despite the pressure of being watched and scored. When her time came for the double-tap Bullseye qualification round, Sarah felt surprisingly calm. Her months of practice had created muscle memory so strong that the technical aspects of shooting felt automatic. The pre-shot routine she had developed with Sergeant Rodriguez helped her maintain focus as she took her position at the firing line. The qualification format required each competitor to fire 5 double-tap sequences at 25 yards, with all 10 shots scored individually and combined for a total score. The top 16 qualifiers would advance to the final elimination round the following day. Sarah's first sequence felt exactly like her practice sessions at the Sheriff's Academy. Her draw was smooth, her sight alignment was precise, and both shots broke cleanly within the timing requirement. When the target was retrieved, both holes were in the 10 ring, separated by less than half an inch. The second through fourth sequences maintained the same level of precision. Her shooting felt effortless, and she found herself enjoying the challenge rather than being intimidated by it. The months of preparation had built confidence that allowed her to perform, rather than just survive the pressure. Her final sequence was nearly perfect. Both shots found the center of the 10 ring, so close together that they nearly overlapped. The electronic scoring system registered both as perfect 10s, giving her a qualification score that ranked second overall among all competitors. The result stunned not only Sarah, but also the veteran competitors who had expected the top positions to go to officers with years of competitive experience. Her total score of 96 out of a possible 100 was higher than shooters from much larger departments with extensive training programs. Captain Hayes was beaming with pride as the scores were announced. That's the kind of shooting that wins championships, he told. Sarah, you've just proven that talent and dedication matter more than experience and resources. The sheriff's team celebration that evening was subdued but enthusiastic. Sarah's qualification score had earned her a spot in the final 16, where she would compete head-to-head against the best double-tap shooters in the region. More importantly, her performance had validated the team's decision to include a civilian competitor and demonstrated the value of her unconventional path to competitive shooting. As Sarah reviewed her performance that evening, she realized that the nervous energy she had felt earlier had transformed into genuine excitement about the final competition. The qualification round had proven that her training was sufficient to compete at this level. Now she had the opportunity to see how far her skills could take her against the very best shooters in the region. The final day of competition dawned clear and calm, with perfect shooting conditions that eliminated weather as a variable in the contest. Sarah arrived at the range early, using the quiet time to review her mental preparation routine and ensure her equipment was properly configured for the elimination rounds. The double-tap Bullseye final would use a different format than the qualification round. Instead of shooting for pure score, competitors would face direct elimination matches where the higher score in each head-to-head pairing would advance to the next round. The format created additional pressure because a single poor performance could end the competition immediately. Sarah was seeded second out of 16 competitors based on her qualification score, which meant she would face the 15th seed in the opening round. While this appeared to be an advantage, she knew that any competitor who had qualified deserved respect and careful preparation. Her first-round opponent was Corporal Jim Stevens from a municipal police department 2 counties away. Stevens was a 20-year veteran with multiple years of competitive experience, though his qualification score suggested he was having an off week. Sarah knew that experience could be a significant advantage in elimination shooting, where managing pressure often mattered more than pure technical skill. The format allowed each competitor to fire one double-tap sequence at 25 yards, with the higher combined score advancing. If the scores were tied, they would shoot additional sequences until someone achieved a higher score. Sarah won the coin toss and elected to shoot second, which gave her the advantage of knowing what score she needed to match or exceed. She watched Stevens deliver a solid performance, placing both shots in the 9 ring for a combined score of 18 points. It was good shooting, but not exceptional. Taking her position at the firing line, Sarah felt the familiar calm that had become her trademark during important shots. Her preparation routine proceeded exactly as it had hundreds of times during practice, and when the start signal sounded, her response was automatic and precise. Both shots found the 10 ring, with the second shot actually touching the edge of the first hole. The electronic scoring system registered 19 points, advancing Sarah to the second round and eliminating the veteran officer who had expected an easier first-round matchup. The second round paired Sarah against Detective Mike Torres from the state police, who had posted the 6th best qualification score. Torres was known throughout the region as an exceptional tactical shooter, and his qualification round had included several near-perfect sequences. This match proved more challenging. Torres delivered an outstanding performance, placing both shots in the center of the 10 ring for a score of 20 points, the maximum possible. Sarah needed a perfect score to tie and force a shoot-off, or she would be eliminated. Standing at the firing line with the pressure of needing perfection, Sarah experienced a moment of clarity that surprised her. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the requirement for perfect shooting, she found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this point. The months of dedicated practice, the patient instruction from Kowalski and the sheriff's team, and the systematic development of her skills had all led to this moment. Her double-tap sequence felt effortless. The sight alignment was perfect, the trigger breaks were smooth, and both shots were released with the kind of precision that comes only from complete confidence in one's technique. When the target was retrieved, both shots were in the exact center of the 10 ring, so close together that they formed a single, slightly elongated hole. The electronic scoring confirmed 20 points, creating a tie that would require a shoot-off to determine the winner. The crowd of competitors and spectators had grown as word spread about the quality of shooting in the double-tap finals. The shoot-off format was sudden death. First miss loses. Both Sarah and Torres would continue firing double-tap sequences until one of them failed to achieve a perfect score. The pressure was enormous, but Sarah found herself more excited than nervous about the challenge. Torres shot first in the shoot-off and delivered another perfect sequence. Sarah responded with her own perfect score. The second round of shoot-off produced the same result, both competitors achieving maximum points. By the third round, the crowd had grown quiet with appreciation for the exceptional level of marksmanship they were witnessing. On the fourth shoot-off sequence, Torres's first shot was perfect, but his second shot caught the edge of the 9 ring. Sarah needed only to match her previous performances to advance, and her muscle memory delivered exactly what was required. 2 shots in the center of the 10 ring eliminated one of the region's most respected competitive shooters. The semifinal round matched Sarah against the top seed, Sergeant Lisa Martinez from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Martinez had qualified with a perfect score and was considered the overwhelming favorite to win the entire competition. Her reputation for clutch shooting under pressure was legendary among regional competitors. Sarah realized that she had already exceeded every reasonable expectation for her first major competition. Reaching the semifinals as a civilian competitor with only months of serious training was an achievement that would be remembered regardless of the final result. This knowledge freed her from the pressure of feeling she had to win, allowing her to shoot with the same relaxed confidence she had developed during practice. Martinez shot first and delivered the kind of performance that had made her famous. Both shots were perfectly centered, creating a single ragged hole in the 10 ring. The crowd applauded the technical excellence of the shooting, knowing they were witnessing championship-level marksmanship. Sarah's response was the best shooting of her brief competitive career. Her pre-shot routine felt perfect. Her sight alignment was precise, and both shots broke with the kind of smooth trigger control that produces optimal accuracy. When the target was retrieved, her shots had created an even tighter group than Martinez's, with both holes actually overlapping in the exact center of the scoring area. The upset victory sent Sarah to the championship final against Captain Robert Chen, Detective Chen's supervisor and a veteran competitor with multiple regional titles. Chen had reached the final by defeating several highly regarded shooters, and his experience in championship matches would be a significant advantage. The championship format required 3 double-tap sequences, with the highest combined score determining the winner. This format rewarded consistency over single perfect shots, playing to Chen's strength as a competitor who rarely made mistakes under pressure. Sarah approached the championship with the same methodical preparation that had carried her through the previous rounds. She had long since stopped thinking about the improbability of her situation and was focused entirely on executing the techniques she had developed through months of dedicated practice. Her first sequence was nearly perfect, 19 points out of 20. Chen responded with a perfect 20. The second sequence saw both competitors achieve perfect scores. Going into the final sequence, Sarah trailed by 1 point and needed a perfect score to force a playoff, or to hope that Chen would make a rare mistake. Standing at the firing line for the championship sequence, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. What had started as curiosity about precision shooting while cleaning the range had evolved into skills that had earned her a place in the championship final of a major regional competition. Her final double tap was the best of the entire tournament. Both shots found the absolute center of the target, creating a single hole that drew gasps of appreciation from experienced competitors who understood the difficulty of such precision. The 20-point score gave her a total that Chen would need to match to win. Captain Chen's final sequence began perfectly, with his first shot centered in the 10 ring. His second shot, delivered under the pressure of needing perfection to claim the championship, caught the inside edge of the 9 ring, a shot that would have been excellent in any other context but fell 1 point short of the required perfection. Sarah Martinez had won the regional double tap Bullseye championship in her first major competition, defeating a field that included some of the most accomplished law enforcement shooters in the multi-state region. The victory was met with stunned appreciation from competitors who understood exactly how exceptional her performance had been. Rangemaster Mike Kowalski, who had driven over to watch the finals, found Sarah afterward as she was surrounded by congratulatory competitors and officials. "You know," he said with a grin, "when you were cleaning that pistol bay 6 months ago, I never imagined you'd end up shocking everyone at the regional championships. This has been the most impressive development of shooting skills I've ever witnessed." Sarah looked at the championship trophy and thought about the notebook she had found that day, filled with Detective Chen's meticulous records of practice and improvement. Her own notebook now contained the story of a journey from casual cleaning duty to regional championship, proving that dedication and proper instruction could achieve remarkable results in a surprisingly short time.